My name is Taita Mukwana, and I'm here to present my born from Brunei ecological system. In the middle is the individual, which in this case is myself, Taita. In the microsystem level, there's my neighbors, my teachers, my family, my classmates, and the school, and friends that I had in my neighborhood. The way that the teachers, when I was a child, shaped me is that they had a very strong relationship and communication with my parents. So I could say that they helped each other to communicate with each other and to mold me as the child that I was at that time. When it comes to friends, I had very strong friendships. I had plenty of friends, and my friendship that I had back then are the ones that have caused me to be the person that I am today, who is very loving and very friendly because of I was very sociable when I was young. Family is where I learned who I am. For example, my language, the first language I've ever spoken, I learned from my family. And my neighbors, I had very good neighbors. I was very loved in my neighborhood. When it comes to the meso system, parents work. My parents, my father is a policeman, my mother's a nurse. So most hours they are at work. So I never got to spend as much time as I would have liked with my parents. And I think that has influenced me to be a person who's, I would say, easily attached to people, because I always had that sense of wanting to be attached to my parents, but I never could, and I could understand that they had to be at work. Then when it comes to my parents and affairs, my parents, when I was growing up, had physical alterations, physical fights. I grew up in a toxic environment in that sense, and that has made me to be a person who angers quite quickly, and it has to do with that upbringing that I had. I was also a victim of corporal punishment from my mother whenever I did anything out of line as a child, from as early as the age of 11. And that also, I believe, has contributed to the way that I easily anger and the way that I cannot control my anger when I get angry. The exosystem. In the exosystem, I've put school funding. The reason I put school funding is that when I went from high school to tertiary, I got NSFAS. So I was able to go to school and have the government pay for me. But then I also put corruption, reason being that I got out of the university that I was at, which I'm not going to mention, because of corruption. They basically messed with our funds and we were excluded from the school. So corruption played a role there in the ecosystem. And then when I go to the macro system, gender roles, my parents are married, and the upbringing that I have is that there's no male and female in the household in terms of when it comes to chores or when it comes to finances and stuff like that. And that has molded me into the person that I am today, because I also do not consider gender roles, especially in my romantic relationships. I do think that this is going to be an advantage when I do become a teacher, because it will mean that I am able to treat my students fairly and equally despite of their genders. And the family structure. My mother and my father, as I've mentioned before, are married. And that is the reason why I also wish I could raise my children in a family unit whereby there's a husband and a wife. Because of that example that I grew up in, for me, it seems as it's the, I will say, appropriate structure for a male and a female to raise their children. And then I went to the community library. Community library it refers to the library that I grew up going to and reading books. That library is the reason why I now aspire to be a teacher, because I found out through that library that I actually enjoy the English language. And in essence, the community library is the reason why I saw that my inspiration to actually teach English and to continue to study and keep studying, especially as a English teacher. The common system, changing institutions. As I mentioned before, so changing institutions was the reason I had to change provinces as well. So I went to a whole new different province. I learned certain languages that I didn't know at that time, and I met people of different cultures. And at some point in my life, I relocated the neighborhood. I went from another neighborhood to another neighborhood. And that is where I